Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. This is the Duval Dive Live, your instant reaction, of course, to this week's game regarding the Jacksonville Jaguars heading over to Detroit. I believe the term mollywhopping applies, the absolute mauling by the Lions. Just a complete overwhelming. Granted, the long list of injuries facing the Jaguars, from quarterback Trevor Lawrence to running back Tank Bigsby, and Christian Kirk, of course, already been out for weeks anyway, and just on and on down the line. And the defense having its own struggles too. 52-6. The Lions scoring on 8 drives, except for the 9th, where they mercifully kneeled down to make all that happen. Why do I get all that out of the way? Because I don't want to say it in front of my personal champion, Travis D. Holmes, the man who is a member of you all as the Duval Devout. Travis, I know why you're shaking your head. I understand. But hey, listen, if you happen to be a Travis Hunter who wants to draft Travis Hunter, this was a great day for you, right?
Sure. I mean, this is what you wanted. Like again, we had this conversation all throughout the week, and you're starting to hear it before the game from all the national writers, the Ian Rappaports, the Adam Schefter, the Josiah Anderson. Everyone's kind of been saying it. Hey, it's gonna all come down to this week. Well, all of a sudden, all of Duval County started wearing them Lions jerseys throughout the week. So if you wanted a loss, that's going to kind of cement this thing. Woo, boy, this was it.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, in a world where Jared Goff threw his most pass yardage as a Detroit Lion, in a world where they had nearly 200 yards rushing and over 100 in the first half, and really a large portion of the good that I wrote in this week's edition of The Good and the Bad and the Spotty that you can find on Fans First Sports Network, is Cam Little kicking a 59-yarder to tie a franchise long and set his career long. I mean, we're already in a rough space, so I'll leave that at that. It felt to me early on that the whole problem, of course, was the defensive front. The middle of the defensive tackles were just rendered completely useless. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, Sonic and Knuckles as they're known, went absolute video game on them. So I suppose we could go. Well, now we don't even really need to go through the details of the game. That kind of sums it up. But let's point blank ask, are they done? And I don't mean the Jaguars, Travis D. Holmes. I mean Doug Pederson. I mean Trent Baalke. What do you think?
I mean, we know Doug's done. I don't think that's much of a question. It was at least a little bit of a question for the remainder of the year. Heading into the week, depending on how they might play, but Doug's done, man. There's no way back from this. I mean, from this performance, and it's like every time the Detroit Lions come into town, or I say they come into town, every time the Detroit Lions show up on the schedule, you should just assume something bad is going to happen. Because at this point, they have shown that they are not in the same category. They may not even be in the same league as this Jacksonville Jaguars team.
Yeah. No, I see that too. Got a comment coming in off the back. Cyclops TV 24 saying, Lions winning the Super Bowl. No surprise here.
Sure. But I was going to say that the Bills are winning the Super Bowl too, because the Bills destroyed this same Jacksonville Jaguars team. This team is not good, and they've been dominated whenever it matters, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Bills are obviously dominant in the AFC East. I think that what feels different about that Bills game is it was just whack. I don't feel like they were there mentally, a whole thing. That's what came to me here with that, but in particular, Mike Barber making this point here. Eric Armstead is still running after the wrong player. Boy, listen, as a Niners guy, it was tough to see Armstead go, but now we're beginning to understand why he may have parted with them, or maybe just the Jags weren't the fit we may have thought they were for what they're doing there too. Obviously, you wrote about it in particular on Big Cat Country on how Armstead in the whole, him playing more defensive end and all of that came in. But listen, that interior line was blowed up, period. We can make jokes about Armstead, but they were, the domination up front is among the worst I've seen covering the Jags. This is the worst I think we've seen it since the 49er game 2 years ago. So
I mean, folks just don't. I mean, they are not seeing. I mean, I guess no one thought that they would be dominated so badly as they have been since losing Fatukasi. And it's such a weird thing because I mean the Jaguars were a little bit like they had a little bit problems here and there, especially with him struggling with being healthy all throughout his last season. But boy, after losing him, it's not even close, man. I mean the Detroit Lions again. When the Detroit Lions game, the Cleveland Browns game, every time they face an offensive front who is a dominant physical run right at you, run through them face offensive line, they get dominated, and it's never close, man. And so they've been struggling to find that guy. They don't have a dedicated run stopper, a guy who's going to plug that middle on that defensive front, and that's going to be an unfortunate opportunity for this new GM. Hopefully, if they have one, knock on wood. Because that's something that they're going to be missing no matter what kind of defense they run.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to focus so much on the defensive tackle spot today in particular, and with the defensive tackles, right? Because listen, I like Devon Hamilton. I think he's a good player. You got just what Ledbetter and these other guys up front that can do things, but another inactive listing for Mason Smith. I'll grant you, I think he actually is injured this time, but this is why
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I honestly don't. I mean, I think he might be injured, but again, when a guy is practicing on a limited basis every day for 3 weeks straight, and this is his fourth game missed in a row, I mean, at that point, you probably would have just put him on IR. But nevertheless, he's been limited in practice. That's the biggest piece about it. That makes me like, is it really an ankle injury, or is it just? Well, you could say it's technically injury related because he did have the injury. The injury was real, but if this were the competitive team, or if he was a player, quote unquote, then I thought they were, then maybe they would play him. Like there are some questions still on that because he's already been a healthy scratch multiple games in the season.
Right. Well, and I feel like in this particular case, Travis, he wouldn't show up on the injury report as being limited in practice were he actually participating, and it's just reps he's not getting. I feel like they would list him as a full participant on the injury report, but I mean, or maybe, listen, I'm not here to say that there may not be some machinations, but
right. I'm just saying that the injury is real, but the injury being real does not make it necessarily why he's not playing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a difference between hurt and injured in that. I can agree with you. And you mentioned, for example, Folaransu Fatukasi being not injured. He was playing hurt throughout the year, and last year. And I think the big reason for that is because he is so central to run stopping for this team. Interesting. You know what? Barbara's got a good question here. I'll bring up what Mike's doing. By the way, thanks for jumping in, Mike. Love to see you. Bigger need, CB2, safety or defensive tackle? And can you afford to plunge more draft capital into defensive tackle?
You want to take that?
Because the reason why I want you to take that first is it'll let you speak to the state of the DB core.
Okay. No, that's fair. But no, at the end of the day, you're going to have a need in all these places. And whether or not you want to waste the draft capital on it or you want to waste free agency money on it, something's going to be applied to this. You're going to have to put some resources into these things, or you're just going to be left with the same product that you're currently getting. So, yeah, whether it's which one's the bigger need, you can't stop the run, you can't win, man. Unless like blitzing only can do so much when you're still getting just folks moved into your linebacker's lap. If you have a defensive lineman who's in your linebacker's lap, doesn't matter the kind of a quality of linebacker you have, you're not going to be able to make those tackles behind the line of scrimmage. So from my point of view, hey man, it's got to be defensive tackle. We can figure out DB. You can have worse DBs. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings have shown us that. The Miami Dolphins have shown us that when they had Brian Flores. You don't have to have the top DBs if you have the right scheme. If you're aggressive enough, then able to kind of, I guess, show those phantom looks and everything else as far as blitzes are concerned. So I'm going to always lean on DBs. On defensive tackle, interior defensive line being the bigger need, and you can kind of figure out DB. But DB's also a need. I mean, Ronald Darby ain't playing great.
Right. And listen, seeing the way that the cover was rated the way it was, or rather a lot of guys were parted with last year, was a problem. We had cited that was going to be interesting. They threw the bag at Tyson Campbell, and when he's on the field, he's absolutely talented. We like what we're seeing from Jari and Jones. Darnell Savage isn't terrible. Everybody else has been relatively disappointing. But Kyle, you had a whole song parody ready for Cisco. You bet your entire rear end. I was all in at Andre Cisco at one point, and he's had a disappointing year. But to your point, Travis, I feel like defensive tackle is the answer because it affects more than one facet of the opposing offense much more dominantly, right? Every play the defensive tackle is taking a snap to either stop the run or intimidate the quarterback, one of the two. He's the shortest path to the quarterback in a passing play. So if you can get a guy that can blow it up in the middle, he could be a Super Bowl MVP, like Aaron Charles Donald was, but got robbed for Cooper Kupp. The punchline is this, though. The question also asked is, do you sink draft capital into it? Yes.
Yeah.
That's what this franchise has done wrong. That's what Trent Baalke's ego was done wrong in more than one place. If a dude stinks, you got to pick wrong. You move off him. Your ego be damned, because you want to know what the fact of the case is, Travis. The moment you do good, everybody forgets that ish, right? Tell me the last time you heard anybody bring up Trey Lance and the 49ers giving up the damn farm for him. It hasn't been talked about. Everything somebody's talking about now is Brock Purdy and whether or not he's going to get paid, and rightly so. So that's kind of the point upon which, where if you see a guy that you like with a draft pick, you get him.
I've been saying that. One of my guys runs the Seattle Seahawks podcast, Bo Crouch, and I've been telling him that that was what I love most about the Legion of Boom, not the actual Legion of Boom, but that coaching staff, that iteration of the Seattle Seahawks, is that they were willing and ready to get off of a draft pick within 2 years every time, like clockburst, sometimes even a year. He'd be a third-round draft pick, and he ain't even on the roster like a year later. And I'm like, that is what I respect. They know exactly what they're looking for. If this person's not what they thought they were in the draft process, and they get him in for a full year, and they figure out this is not going to work, they are ready by the next offseason to get off that guy, like maybe even early in training camp. I've always respected that. If you have a coaching staff, if you have a general manager who are in sync and they know exactly what they want, cool. This ain't what I want. Get off of it and let's go to the next guy. So I'm huge on, if you want to draft that guy, but you got to have a plan of action. You got to know what you're looking for, and you got to be in sync. All things that are not happening in Jacksonville, which is kind of why we have what we have.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a good part of what you're saying too, is staying married to picks. Like, going back to Fortner being a second-year guy, but still a starter. Now, granted, you spun that on its head and said he's the best backup in the NFL. Okay, cool. But unfortunately, the Jags needed him today with Mitch Morse getting an eye injury. You know what? Let me answer Mike. He's come in with said Niners drastically less holes in their roster, but point taken. Yeah, exactly. Regardless of the holes in the roster, I think it all applies. Like, if conversely, like the example I use with the 49ers, and they made it to the Super Bowl, so all's forgotten. You're going to try to tell me if the Jags win another playoff game, they give a damn if Mason Smith is on the roster at some point? No, they don't. So.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares if it's successful. If it's working, then you're good.
Yeah, but listen, winning's the ultimate deodorant. Mike said it himself in the comment that he gets the point, but I wanted to say that out loud for everybody that, I'll put it this way. But say the Raiders get a good move off of Gardner Minshew. Will anybody care? What if the Panthers move off of Bryce Young and start winning games? Will anybody care? No. It's going to be about applying that deodorant that is victory, right?
Well, that's what I've been telling folks about this Detroit Lions team coming into town, because they made a lot of hard decisions. You can argue about how hard the decisions were, but in the trading away of Matt Stafford, in the trading away of TJ Hawkinson to Minnesota, they traded one of their defensive backs and basically ended up packaging the pick that they got to get Brian Branch later.
Well, even later on, parting with DeAndre Swift was something that was fascinating,
Yeah, right. So the point is, they've made some tough decisions that a lot of folks in Jacksonville, I do hope that you're ready for, because we've all come to terms, and all of Duval County at different times have all said we are paying a lot of guys who are really good, maybe even above average, great money. Like, we are paying a lot of guys top 5 to top 10 money who may just be above average. You might even argue that they're average on other teams. And that's going to be some very tough decisions that's going to need to be made because the Jacksonville Jaguars got to get into a better spot where they are truly, in the words of Trent Baalke, a draft and developed team. But Trent, you got to be better at drafting though, because the developing ain't gonna do all the heavy lifting, bro.
Wait a minute. He drafted great. Remember, this was the greatest team the Jacksonville Jaguars ever assembled, according to Shad Khan. Am I right?
We are correct. They are the greatest Jacksonville Jaguars team ever assembled under Shad Khan, and that's what you get for
Yeah, well,
it.
yeah. Listen, I make that joke, but I think there's an element there that's 100% correct. By the way, is it any extra a dagger to see a quarterback come out and have a perfect passer rating whose quarterback coach is the great Mark Brunell?
That's not going to quiet down the folks in Jacksonville who want Mark Brunell to be the next OC.
Well, okay. I mean, that say, hey, he's available. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, if you want to bring him as the OC and put him under Ben Johnson as head coach, who's still going to actually call plays, feel free. But I'm never the guy to get into that whole. They have to have a Duval link to coaching Duval. Like, I'm not that guy. But I know it does work for a lot of franchises. It worked for Matt LaFleur in Green Bay because he was a Michigan guy who's from that area. A lot of links. It worked for a lot of guys. It worked for John Lynch in San Francisco. Like, there's a lot of guys where it does absolutely work. So I'm not so resistant to saying that. But
we won't know. We won't ever know if it worked for Byron Leftwich because he didn't come in because of Trent Baalke, and now here we are.
I'm mad. I'm still mad about that because folks was celebrating. Folks, even today, if you ask them, will be mad about Byron Leftwich. And I'm sitting there like, oh yeah, it worked out because we didn't get Byron Leftwich because what is he doing? Where is he coaching? The same place Byron Leftwich is coaching right now in the same place Doug Pederson's about to be coaching, at home. And at the end of the day, it does not matter because you don't know if that was going to work out or not because he actually would have had a different GM come in and this would have been a different situation. And that drives me crazy how folks, if the Jaguars make a move, they just have to be on the side of the team. And I get it, the team's going to be here. Coach isn't, GM isn't, whatever. But nah, man, I'm not going to be on board with that because we knew this might not work. We knew it early on. But we were happy about 2022, and I'm not going to rehash this conversation because we've already had it. But at the end of the day,
if you want to hear,
it's quite possible that Byron Leftwich could have worked out with a GM that he was in lockstep with, instead of this mess that we ended up getting, and minimal development from Trevor because of the mess that you now have in the Jacksonville Jaguars front office.
Yeah, if you want to hear what Travis is talking about, just go to the short about it on the Duval Dive YouTube channel. So there you go. It's actually,
and while you're here, please like and subscribe. It takes a second and it helps us with this algorithm, helps us grow this thing, man.
Helps us let you know when Doug Pederson and Trent Baalke get fired. Boom. Because you'll get that subscription pop up. What are they talking about? Oh my gosh, it happened. Like it's Monday or Tuesday. Why are they doing a show? Because it happened. Oh my God. I just saying in a potential world.
In a potential world.
Here's the thing, and I think Ben Johnson's on the top of everybody's list.
He should be. You got Ben Johnson, you got Liam Cohen over in Tampa Bay, who's doing the Lord's work. You got a few options, man.
Yeah, Tampa's actually had a much better year than I would have thought, and they're keeping in the fight despite losing Godwin permanently too. Mike chimes in. Silver lining is now we know for certain that Trevor Lawrence has been carrying this team. I mean, we did on this show, but
bro, some of us have always known.
I mean,
let's keep that straight. Some of us have always known, but now even the box score watchers can't be like, well, maybe Mac Jones or maybe this or maybe that. Ain't no maybe, bro.
Maybe
left the window.
Been a while since I heard Emmanuel Ocho put Sunshine's name in his mouth, Travis Holmes.
Nah, man. It's been weeks since we can mention maybe in this case, man. We know the scheme sucks, and now we know we objectively can say another former first round draft pick also struggled in carrying this offense, even when they went into hurry up mode in this offense, because unfortunately for Matt Jones, and that's no shade to him, he is not Trevor Lawrence. He does not have the physical skills that Trevor Lawrence does. Not many quarterbacks do. So the fact of the matter is, we can objectively see what we've always known. If this team is not down 10 plus points and Trevor Lawrence is able to kind of call his own plays from the line of scrimmage and kind of run this team back without having to have a coach basically handcuff him into his schematic way of running the offense. This team is in deep water. They are struggling without a paddle. Like, this is what this is. And unfortunately for Mac Jones, he was just the example to kind of show us what this team will look like for 2 weeks straight without Trevor Lawrence and his magical arm and 10 plus points down having to come back. This is what it looks like. 6 points.
How much of it do you think the injuries were a factor today? With Edson being limited, I wouldn't even let me.
F that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm in my emotions. My apologies.
Yeah, no, and you're good. But like somebody's was going to ask the question or bring it up, so we had to cover it here. And yeah, no,
man, we got 12 carries for 27 yards. At halftime, the leading rusher for the Jaguars was also Travis Etienne. At that point, it was with 7 carries for 12 yards. That's your leading rusher with the backup quarterback. You're already going to lose. And that's before you get into the conversation of the fact that the Jacksonville Jaguars defense had 7 touchdowns, gave up 7 touchdowns on 7 drives straight. You can't win like that.
Drives, yeah.
Yeah, 8 scoring drives straight. Like, again, that hadn't happened since I believe Ben Barwell's. That hadn't happened since 2007. The New England Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
Dang. All right, that's been a while. 17 straight years of all NFL football between all these terrible teams, and the Jacksonville Jaguars have to be the one to secure this callback. Like I said earlier, if you were a Jacksonville Jaguars fan who wanted a clear sign to even a non-ball watcher like Shad Khan, you got it. This was it.
Hey, Shad, wake up. Slap.
Hey, Shad, wake up. Your team lost 52-6. There is no world where you can look at this and be like, that was a competitive game. There's no world where you can look at this, even if you don't understand the sport, and be like, ooh, that was a beat down. That was a beat him down. Like, everyone who, whether you watch football or you don't watch football, that score, and these objective stats say this was not it. And I'm happy his ship was in Jacksonville, so maybe he can quickly have those conversations.
Yeah. I don't think there's an argument to that. Unless you seem secure that Doug's going to be fired.
I am. I so am. I really just hope. This is my hope, and I don't expect it to happen. But my hope is that Shad makes the decision to let them both go at the same time. I don't believe it to happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's what I want to happen.
Allegedly, Shad Khan's yacht is currently docked on that part of the world. So
it's not alleged at all. It's there. We've seen the pictures. We've seen the videos, the photos, and everything else. It is in Jacksonville. The question of the hour is it going to remain in Jacksonville through tonight when they get in town?
I love the efficiency, though. Whatever Jacksonville Jaguar officials can, Cyclops coming and say, "May as well interview Ben Johnson now." I mean,
you may as well tamper. Why not? Like, let's pull up what the Miami Dolphins owner did it with Tom Brady. Let's get him on a boat somewhere. Let's get him on that boat and let's just have this conversation.
Man,
isn't that what happened with the Brian Flores lawsuit? He was like, hey, he had Tom Brady on the boat and then he tried to have a conveation illegally.
And listen, there's a whole lot that went on with that lawsuit. There's the allegedly, the tanking command that he wouldn't accept. There's the political issues surrounding it. There's a whole lot in that. We ain't got to bring that up. By the way, how's Brian Flores finding success in Minnesota at the moment?
I mean, we always knew the man was an awesome DC. Like, we already knew he was going to be one of the highest man coverage DCs, super physical, like super uber physicals, uber aggressive, blitzing like crazy, and he is still that same guy. There's still the question of how well he's going to do as far as running his offense. Who he's going to get as an OC, the next opportunity that he finally gets as a head coach, and how he handles his players. I mean, that was a real thing between he and Tua. It's how he talked to Tua, how he nurtured Tua, are you going to be that old school guy who's going to just be, are you going to be that new school coach a lot like a Mike McDaniel? And that's going to be a real thing that he's going to have to figure out how to manage through with a lot of these new school players. But nevertheless, that as a DC, the man was the man. Like, he was always going to be that guy.
Mike coming in acting.
Handoff. Lord, Mike. Off the top rope.
You could probably get Armstead to interview Ben Johnson if you fake the handoff to him. Wow. No, so let me put you on this point, Blake. Let's say the Jags can't land Ben Johnson for whatever reason. Bill Belichick is too snobby to take the job, we'll say.
Hey, man. It depends on who we get as GM.
Would you be Fair. Would you embrace Brian Flores as the next Jacksonville Jaguar head coach?
I'm a little worried about, again, because it depends on who he's going to get as his OC. And I'm not worried about how well the defense will play with someone like a Brian Flores in charge, but I am concerned about being another 500 team, another 500 set ceiling team. And with Brian Flores without a good OC, like I mean a truly up and coming OC that you will at least get into this franchise for 2 years,
Yeah.
realistically, would have the Jacksonville Jaguars just stuck in that, stuck in perpetuity for in that range, and that's what I don't want.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm more leaning onto this. I need a top offensive coach who maybe even can call his own plays, be the head coach, because you can't lose that guy. You're guaranteed to have that guy fulfilling the blank time frame, married to Trevor Lawrence, who we know is going to be here for the next 7-8 years. So that's kind of why I am where I am. Like I'm almost to the point where I'm saying, like, hey man, it's been or bust. Like if it ain't been, and it may not be, I'll take a coin flip on someone like a Liam Cohen. I might be like, hey man, Doug's on his final year, leave him. like leave him here and wait the next season. Like I don't even know, or one of these college guys, maybe something along those lines.
Let me tell you why I like Brian Flores the way I do. And you make the point about offensive players and how he and Tua didn't get along, and that's fine. I wrote for the Dolphins Wire the year taking for Tua when he was the head coach, right? Shouts to my guy, Antoine Staley, who's now writing for the Jets, ironically. The way he handled people who understood that it was a rebuild and let them go if they wanted to, like the Minka Fitzpatricks, the Kenyon Drakes, right, the Laramie Tunsels, guys of that ilk, all of whom I was absolutely sad to see go because I liked writing about them because they were interesting players. But those guys being allowed to do what they did, it just shows that he is capable of being a player's coach, in my opinion. And then the weirdest thing about tanking for Tua that 2019 year, they started winning the back half. Everybody forgets about that that they put up some dubs on the way out to keep them out of the top pick. Brian Flores was starting to turn things around in a fashion that now is made famous by Madden Campbell himself here with Detroit. Now, I'm not saying that the Dolphins would be that group, but we have that evidence with Flores, and he's a different temperament than Doug Pederson while still having hints of that player sympathy to him. I wouldn't be mad at it, Travis Domes.
I wouldn't be mad at it because I'm a defensive guy. So I would love the defense, but I'm here and I'm able to think longer, and that's because of that. It's a problem that I'm fighting within myself. Because again, being that defensive guy, I'm just like, I'm always going to lean the defensive coaches, but I'm also like, I need to see my QB1, who I know is much better than what he's been able to show because he's been handcuffed in the scheme misfit. The last thing I want then is to have a defensive coach that comes in, and I'm now kind of put into a weird situation where I don't know what I'm going to get from OC. I don't know what I'm going to get for scheme, and then be stuck with, again, Trevor Lawrence having to uplift a bad scheme or an ineffective scheme because that's who the defensive coordinator was able to get as his OC. Like I'm real weird about that.
Here's the upside of getting a guy that has a more basic, more fundamental scheme. Like, I'm not saying go out and get Mike Vrabel and put him an offensive coordinator. Let's not get stupid, okay?
Some people have been saying this, yes.
Well, yeah, have him as a defensive coordinator. Can we not put him in offensive coordinator? Can we not do the Patriots? We saw how that worked, right? But the upside to a good guy that runs a scheme like that's a smash mouth, more basic scheme that isn't so aerodynamic as Doug Pederson's allegedly is.
Yeah.
They'll care about the offensive line. Get coaches. Right now, the Jacksonville Jaguars need a coach that ain't going to be the guy to get them to the promised land. They need a guy that can at least get them to that midpoint. Then make the decision if your OC is the one that can get you over the top. Because then
So you're again arguing for another coach to get you back to mid, if I'm saying this right. Like get you back to base.
I don't know. I don't see because the term mid means what it does now to the kids. I don't like that wording. Okay. But what it is Get this group to being a group that can once again punch somebody in the damned mouth.
But are you willing to do that to give Trevor Lawrence another 3 to 4 years, realistically, potentially?
Look at you walk in, falling right into my trap. Would you really, though? Because here's the thing. If you could run the football that well, you're going to try to tell me he won't find BTJ with at least 2 lottery ticket passes a game?
Trevor's it's the same conversation that we've been having with Doug Pederson, though. Doug wants Trevor to run more under center. He wants to establish the run game and run the offense in that way. Trevor's better running from shotgun, and they don't have a running back currently on the roster. I mean, again, maybe a year from now they would. That runs better from shotgun, who was an effective, who was effective in other areas of the game. Like all of their running back, the whole running back core is limited, which we got to talk about on Wednesday's Duval Dive too, because that's something that came to my mind. Wow, why is this Jaguars offense and defense so hard to coach around? Because we've always been banging on these coaches for being not, quote unquote, not good at their job, even though they've been good in other places. Let's talk about why they are struggling to coach around the players that they're given that we know are good in individual areas. And I think that's going to point back to our GM. But log in on Wednesday and talk to us about it.
Well, and I'll make the last point this. Mike says in the comments, get the best air raid coach available right now. Get that guy. No, that's no. That is an epic fail decision. Unless this guy knows what he's doing, getting the offensive line to protect, I don't want him. That is not.
I mean, all air raid guys are not like no offensive line guys, though. But
well, I'll put it this way: like Mike Martz in the day, who was the greatest show on turf coach for the Rams, got quarterbacks killed. Okay. The reason why we have Kurt Warner is because this dude dared Mark Bolger to sit back there for upwards of 4 to 5 seconds sometimes. Okay. I don't want that. Now, granted, I'm not saying that that's what's happening here. Like Mike McDaniel, if for some reason he came available, he ain't it for me in Jacksonville.
I got you.
Okay.
I got you.
That's not the guy. I want somewhere. If in a perfect world, it's Jim Harbaugh, but obviously he's not available. So no, I mean that kind of a coach. I don't listen. If it's a coach that throws the ball a lot, if it doesn't, I don't care. I need somebody who's friggin' tough. Damn it, somebody out there needs to get this group back because listen, we saw for all the good that came. I'm going all the way back to camp for this in June, Travis. We saw how good that team could be, but how horrible the front was.
Offensive front,
say was well, no.
They got dominated by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the joint practices. They got dominated by the Kansas City Chiefs when the starters played. Like we knew early on that the fronts were problematic.
And you're taking into July and August too. Good on you, Chief.
Right, man. We saw it face to face before everybody else had it, and we all knew it was a problem. And we was hoping against hope that the Jaguars building this thing skill. Let's just be clear. The Jacksonville Jaguars building this bad boy ass first was a problem. Like, that's really what it came down to because they built this roster, skill positions first, and then we just tried to band-aid it with offensive linemen. That's what it is. And whereas the Detroit Lions tried to build this bad boy, offensive line and defensive line first, and then they kind of went backwards from there and built and added the skill positions to it, and they have all the time in the world. The Jacksonville Jaguars offensive line today had the most time that they possibly could all season. This is the most. It was, I believe, Dan Griffin on X stated it was like 2.87 seconds at one point time to throw for the Jaguars. And the offensive line actually gave them the most time they'd given them all season, and it didn't matter because the receivers couldn't get open. And so it's just we're kind of weirdly in this little odd spot.
I'd be interested to see your film analysis of that, by the way, because I don't know how much of that is from them sitting back. Because there were some times where they were in there blowing stuff up too. But
right, because Detroit wasn't blitzing; they were just getting. They were just like
front
four. Let's get there. And in the backside, you got all the 7 defenders kind of just taking away everything else and not getting space.
Hey, you get it. Linebackers get underneath. Maybe you might get beat by Ingram as you did early, right? I wouldn't call it beat, but he got some catches, right? Our DBs are good, and should they catch the ball will depend on Brian Branch to, do his best. Craig on Debo from Friday. You got knocked out, man. No. So that's so again, bake Jacksonville, bake cake, worry about the frosting later. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So you want the aggressive, more like a Dan Campbell, more like a Mike Vrabel, more like a well, I mean, you already named him, Brian Flores. Like you want one of these types of coaches who are going to impact the overall team, make them be tougher in general. I fully
And
understand that.
maybe Ben Johnson can do all that. Full circle. We can end the show.
Maybe he can, and I hope coming from Detroit that he will recognize that and he wouldn't fully lean into the offensive side because that's something the Jaguars need. So I'm here for it, bro. We'll have a long time to talk about it and kind of figure out where this bad boy lands. Brian Brett said, "What you got on my 40, homie?"
Delphonic. I like that. Well done. Well done, sir. I like
Another
that.
guy we wanted in Jacksonville.
Hmm.
Another guy, Brian Branch.
Separate conversation there. Listen, Travis, you got plenty of drinking to do regarding your team. Tell tell the people where you can.
You see the shirt. Yeah, you see the shirt. What's your sleep number?
Yes.
We're going to find out tonight. Duval County, congratulations. You probably got your wish with Doug Pederson being out in the paint. Let's see what else that holds for, but we will let you know as soon as that news hits. But you can find my writings covering the Jacksonville Jaguars, bigcatcountry.com. At me on Blue Sky, at me on X, all the socials, Travis D. Holmes, and we're going to talk some Jacksonville Jaguars primarily, but we'll also get into some other football, hell, maybe even some Boston for y'all that saw that Tyson Jake Paul. I don't want to call it fight. Yeah, I don't want to call it fight, but we'll just say the thing that happened between this young man and this old man being abused. That thing. So yeah, man, just add me on the socials. Let's do bigcatcountry.com. Take a look at the Motor City beatdown, the Jaguars being destroyed by the Lions post-game recap that was just posted. And we'll get into it on Wednesday after the film review, and we'll get into some bye-week questions. We'll have the mailbag in the Discord and all of these things, man. So stay log in. Let's go.
I'm glad you brought that up. All you out there on Twitter, all you out there in the Discord that Travis is going to reach out to, all that. Listen, we're looking for your questions. That's going to be a fun episode. The last time we did it, y'all had some great contributions, especially with the coaching controversy that has presented itself. I'm sure you guys will all have some great stuff and great questions there too. So we will be doing a grab bag next week for the bye week. Travis and I will work on what time that'll happen during the week, but we will announce it on the socials and all of that. So make sure you look out for any of that. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at the SOTG. Oh, hey, did you give him your blue sky there, Travis? I know you are one of the migrants.
I mean, it's Travis D. Holmes on everything. So Blue Sky, Travis D. Holmes, you'll find me. And also, the Jacksonville Jaguars thread, Jacksonville Jaguars feed, the Teal Sky feed. Again, I'm associated with all of them. You'll find me there. But yeah, that's the Blue Sky.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Man, listen, at day's end, it's going to be a fun time. So make sure you're paying attention. Of course, find me also on the Student of the Game as the Student of the Game on Facebook. Check out my writings with Fans First Sports Network for both the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Orlando Magic. Thank God, a winning team amongst the stuff I cover. Goodness gracious. Then make sure you check that. Of course, the good, the bad, and the spotty coming out here soon on the Fans First Sports Network. Plus, my work covering UCF football and basketball. Another coach firing I might have to cover here sooner than later. Check that out, the black and gold banneret.com. And of course, the podcast with that called The Night Shift. So make sure you check that out. That is run entirely by the Black and Gold Banneret crowd. So enjoy all of that. Plus, the Student of the Game podcast this week should be fascinating. I will definitely have a comment or two. No, not about the one moment of the stream for the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight that everyone saw when the stream was working. I'll say this: after watching that happen and sitting on a chair that broke today, I have more body image issues than I've ever had before. We'll leave all that at that. But make sure you check that out Wednesday, 9:00. Of course, Wednesday at 7:30 is our normal Duval Dive weekly podcast. And instead of the instant reaction, like we said this week, we will have the grab bag. We will get a time for that to you here sooner than later. So also pay attention. I'm sure both of us will be rattling away briskly once news of Dougie P drops. So for my friend Travis D. Holmes of Big Cat Country, I am Kyle Nash, the Student of the Game, And until next time, everyone, class dismissed.